All rise, the bailiff said, and the room stood as one. The doors swung. Chains clinked. And there she was, the woman in the jumpsuit who had turned my home into a bonfire 5 days earlier. She looked up to the bench, searching for a lifeline, and found me instead, Judge Andre Colston, the man whose house she burned to the ground. Not guilty, her lawyer said, and I felt the words float through the air like smoke that sticks to your clothes. If you want to understand how we got here, you have to start small, because hate rarely announces itself with sirens. It starts with a letter about a porch light, a note about hedges, a photo of a car, tire kissing a curb. Wilmington, North Carolina was supposed to be quiet for me. Cul-de-sacs cookouts, a 2-story brick place where my sister Sharon would drop by with hush puppies, where my nephew once learned to ride a bike in the driveway, where I could hang my robe and remember how to breathe. Then came the clipboard black binder tucked under an elbow and a smile that never reached the eyes. Judge Colston, your porch light violates quiet hours, she said. It's on a timer. I told her security shuts off around midnight. Bylaws say 11, she replied. Tone flat as a ruler. A week later, a letter arrived. Hedges above regulation. Then mailbox color. Then my nephew's saxophone at 5 in the afternoon suddenly qualified as a disturbance. I laughed at first. You know what I mean. The kind of laugh you use when you want the world to be simple. But Sharon shook her head and stacked the letters on my counter like evidence. This isn't about standards, Andre. It's about you. I crossed the street, knocked, and told her straight. You've turned rules into harassment. She looked at me the way someone looks at a locked door, patient, annoyed, certain she'd find a key, and said, I treat everyone the same. Then why is my mailbox the only one you check twice a week? Asked. Her eyes flickered just a second, just enough. Because you don't belong here the way you think you do. Yeah, that happened. I wrote those words down the minute I got home date time, the way her mouth bit on belong. I wish I could tell you that cameras fix dread. They don't, they just record it. I put them up anyway. The footage showed what my bones already knew. Her silhouette lingering at midnight. The phone out at noon, HOA meetings where she said, into a microphone. Some people hide behind titles, judges, lawyers, and think rules don't apply. Folks in the room pretended to look at their agendas and looked at me instead. My friend Victor told me, man, she's measuring your patience like it's a yardstick, better lock up. I added, deadbolts, checked them twice, and tried to live like the world was normal. Then, Thursday bled into Friday at 2 a.m. with a crackle that didn't sound like pipes or old wood. Smoke hit first. The alarm finally caught up, my throat turned to paper, and all my training. Decades of keeping my voice steady while other people shook, narrowed to 3 moves: crawl, low, grab, phone, get out. I fumbled the deadbolt and stepped barefoot into a yard, washed in orange. Neighbors shouting my name, sirens yawning awake down the road. I stood on the sidewalk in a cough that wouldn't quit, clutching a briefcase I'd snatched on instinct. Case files, nothing more. While a lifetime of photos, quilts, books, the armchair, where Janice used to read, folded into heat. The house exhaled, and the roof sighed down. The fire marshal told me what I already knew. Accelerant along the fence line. Judge, someone wanted this to run fast. Doorbell cameras from 2 houses over caught a car circling twice my own camera. Caught a figure hustling back to the driver's door. Detectives Ortiz and Dunlop spoke to me like people who understand both grief and paperwork. And 2 days later, they knocked on Colleen Markham's door. The bottle in her garage matched the residue. The gloves weren't clean, the plate on the car traced back to family, who had texts asking why she needed it after midnight on a work night. When they walked her down her driveway in cuffs, she didn't cry. Chin up, eyes hard, daring someone to blink. That's how we got to the moment where the bailiff said, "All rise," and the defendant walked into my courtroom and locked eyes with the man she'd tried to erase. Her attorney asked for reassignment, as he should, and I noted it. We proceeded with the arraignment, as procedure requires. The machinery of justice isn't a couch you drag from room to room because it's inconvenient. Did it feel surreal? Absolutely. Did I keep my voice even? I did, because the whole town was watching to see if the robe would hold or slip. "Not guilty," he said again. And somewhere in that instant, she let a smirk slip. Like getting me into that chair was a victory all its own. Reassignment came shortly after. Another judge took the case the way it should be, and the trial moved quicker than anyone expected, because evidence likes to hold hands when it's telling the truth. The prosecution didn't grandstand, they just laid a track. The footage, the accelerant, the nozzle, the gloves, the pattern of HOA complaints, the neighbors willing to climb into a witness chair and say what they'd seen. Linda Garvey, retired teacher voice, shaking at first, then steady as habit. She paced by his hedge at midnight, like she was waiting for a cue, she said. Victor looked at the jury, the way a man looks at a friend he won't lose again. I told him to get better locks, didn't think I should tell him to build a watchtower. The fire marshal explained how cold night air feeds a hot line of fuel, why the flames ate low and fast along the siding. The defense did what the defense must, raised the possibilities that cameras glitch cars get borrowed. Stress makes people do foolish things. Asked for a mistrial when they played my 911 call, and you could hear me coughing between numbers. The judge denied it with a gavel that didn't need to be loud. The jury took 4 hours, came back with faces that told you where this was going before the foreperson unfolded the paper. Guilty of felony arson, guilty of criminal damage, guilty of aggravated harassment with a hate crime enhancement. Sharon closed her eyes in the front row and exhaled like she'd been holding her breath since July. Linda reached for her husband's hand. Victor stared at the floor, because tough men sometimes look down when the world finally feels fair. At sentencing, the prosecutor talked about danger and trust. The defense tried to draw a softer portrait with old good deeds, and the judge asked if I wanted to speak. I did glasses off, eyes clear, because I didn't want a lens between me and the truth. "You burned a house," I said. "But that's not the worst of it. You burned a hole in what a neighborhood is supposed to be. You took rules meant to keep lawns tidy and used them like weapons. Justice isn't revenge, it's a mirror, and today you have to look at it." 22 years parole after 15, the gavel echoed, and for the first time since the night of the fire, I felt my shoulders drop. That evening, I stood on the sidewalk across from a blackened foundation and touched a half-burned photo I'd pulled from the rubble. Janice's smile scorched at the edge, but still there in the middle. Neighbors came by without speeches, just hands on shoulders and casseroles. "You eat standing up." A teenager pedaled by and said, "That was wild. Wide-eyed and honest. The fire was wild." I told him, "Justice is work. You know what I mean. Rebuilding takes lumber and patience, but trust takes something else. People willing to say, 'I saw the letters and I stayed quiet. I heard the muttering and I didn't want trouble. I'm sorry." The HOA elected new leadership, rewrote some rules, boxed up Colleen's binder. But paper alone doesn't fix the thing under the thing. only people do that, only neighbors, deciding not to look away when a rule gets used like a knife. Now here's the part I want you to wrestle with. Was it right for me to preside over that first procedural hearing before reassignment, even by the book, even with another judge taking the case right after? Some will say, no optics matter. Justice has to look clean to be believed. Some will say, holding steady that morning did more for faith in the system than a dozen press conferences. I can hear both sides. And what about HOAs where you live? Are they a shield for community standards or a sword for people hungry for control? If you've been on the wrong end of 1,000 small cuts that never made the news until they finally bled into something criminal, I see you. Document everything. Tell someone you trust. Keep your dignity, even when someone is trying to measure it with a clipboard. If you watched a situation like this from your window and told yourself, "Not my business," remember that fires don't just need fuel. They need a draft, and silence is a draft. If this story stirred something in you, say it out loud. Was the sentence fair? Should a judge ever touch a case where he's the victim, even for one hearing? Have you seen rules used as a weapon where you live? Drop a comment, push back. Share your stories, tell me where justice worked. Where it failed, what your neighborhood taught you about bias and courage. If you want more stories told, plain and true, hit like. Subscribe, and share this with someone who needs to hear it before their porch light becomes a headline.